Hey, what's going on, DDO players? Axel here. So in this video, I'm just going to go through and talk about the Archmage tree. So recently, I resurrected an alt I had, which was my old wizard alt that I had years ago abandoned. But I resurrected him and leveled him all the way back up to cap at level 30. And along the way, I played around with a couple of the wizard trees. So I thought I'd make a couple of videos just giving my thoughts on the trees and just talking about each enhancement and what I found useful and what I didn't. So that's what I'm going to do. This video is not necessarily intended to be a guide. It's just what I think about the enhancements and my experiences with them. Okay. So we're going to do Archmage in this video. So let's talk about the cores. So the cores in Archmage are really cool because there's a lot of different multi-selectors here, and there's lines here for each of the different spell schools. The two that I used the most, that I found the most useful, were the enchantment line and the necromancy line, which are both good for different reasons. The enchantment line can give you some extra cheap crowd control. If that's what you want. It has some hold spells in it, has some charm spells in it, has some dance spells in it. So that's really nice for a little bit of added crowd control. And the original design of this wizard was going to be an enchantment focused wizard, and then later he evolved into, as I got to epics, he kind of evolved into a necromancy focused wizard. So the necromancy line is what I ended up using, I would say, probably the most. And it doesn't give you any like amazing SLAs, like there's no finger of death SLA, anything like that here. But what it does do is it gives you some really nice spells that help you to land your like finger of death, circle of death, wail the banshee type spells. So the particularly the last two. So you get waves of fatigue and enervation. Waves of fatigue, it affects multiple enemies and reduces their fortitude saves to help you land your like I said, the instant death spells, which are all fortitude based. And enervation is similar, except this is for one target, except it's better for one target than waves of fatigue is for a single target. But it causes negative levels to help you land your spells, which is very nice. The other ones here, not the most useful. So we had, for example, you got Chill Touch, which is, it's probably okay for lower levels, but it doesn't do much damage in its touch range. Command Undead is pretty useful, and then we have Halt Undead, which are also pretty useful. But you also have Undead to Death kind of as a wizard. So when I faced Undead, that's the spell I tended to use instead of these SLAs. Okay, let's go ahead and get through the first. We'll start here with the first tier. Talk about some of these enhancements here. So subtle spellcasting. This is just one I took just because you have to take something to move up in the tree, and it's not bad. It basically decreases your threat with your spell, so enemies are less likely to attack you. So it just reduces the aggro, kind of the aggro. What would you call it? Multiplier that your spells give. So it's something. It's I guess it's better than a lot of these other ones in what you can take. So this next one, Energy of the Scholar. This is an obvious one that I think every wizard's going to take that invests in Archmage. It increases your spell points by 90 if you take all three tiers. Traditionalist Caster, this helps if you're wearing an orb or staff, except these days with casters, and this is actually something, as I talked about in a previous video, that the developers are really aiming to make it more worth it for casters to carry a staff instead of two scepters or two clubs. But as of right now, you're usually better off carrying two things. Though my character is actually using an orb right now, so maybe I should have reevaluated whether I want to take this enhancement. But in any case, unless you're using an orb, you probably don't want to use it. Okay, this line here, this is the spell critical line. I try to avoid this line. There's a line of this that for basically for all your elemental and untyped spells, it'll increase the critical hit percentage by a little bit, and then the same thing over here in the Pale Master tree for negative energy. I just find this, it's nice, but 2 AP for 1%, it seems too expensive to me to be worth it. So I avoided it. It also didn't help that I didn't. I ended up not using these SLAs at the end of the day, although I did experiment with them and use them some. So if I were to use these untyped SLAs, maybe I'd be a little bit more likely, to actually take that enhancement. But nevertheless, let's move on. So Wand and Scroll Mastery. So this is actually a really good enhancement on a cleric, but just particularly because if you're running a cleric and you have a plus 75% healing and damage from your scrolls, this is particularly useful for healing scrolls, right? But for a wizard, there's not really much use here that I can see, because what are you going to use scrolls for? You're not going to use them for nuking. They're just terrible at that. There's really you're really not going to be healing as a wizard. Well, I guess if you had really high with your UMD, you could heal scroll people, but unless you're really going to do that, I don't know why you would really take this one. Let's move on to efficient meta magic. This is another one. I try to avoid these because they're just, they're just kind of they're really expensive, and I don't like a 1 point, 2 point reduction for 2 AP. I just don't find that to be a good use of action points. I think I did end up taking it here just because I had to take something because I wanted to move up in the tree, but at the end of the day, this cost me 6 AP for 4 few spell points from Quicken. Not really a good use. I don't know. Maybe I should have tried to figure out another way to get around that. But a lot of the the enhancement I've taken right now, this isn't necessarily what I would say is the optimal thing for me to take. I've been continuously experimenting with different investment point strategies here, so this should not be taken as the optimal one. This is just what I happen to have right now. This character, by no means was I playing him to be super optimal. I mean, I was running mostly not even much Reaper, mostly just elite and hard. So plus it's an alt with he has no gear or anything like that, hardly any. So let's move on to we already talked about the spell critical line. So let's talk about on the left here, the Arcane Bolt Blast SLA line here. So these I did use for quite a while just to experiment with them. The advantage, and I'm going to go ahead and compare this to the Pale Master ones. So with the untyped damage here, with these SLAs, as I said, you have one that single target, which is the bolt, and one that is multi-target with the blast. The good thing about these is that they're untyped, so they pretty much affect everything. You don't have the problem that you have over here with the Necrotic Bolt, Necrotic Blast line, and Pale Master, in that there are so many monsters in this game that are immune or resistant to negative energy. So with untyped spells, you don't have that problem. But on the downside, this doesn't do quite the damage that the necrotic ones do. So let's see. Rank 3, it's 1 to 6 points of force damage per caster level to all enemies within its radius. Whereas here on the 3rd tier, it's 6 to 11. I think that's 6 to 11. So it's a lot better, the damage. Here with Necrotic Blast, and I really noticed that too when I switched over to Necrotic Blast, is how much more damage it was doing. But at the same time, with Necrotic Blast, you're not gonna. There's a lot more enemies that are immune. So if you go run something like Necro 4, it's just it's almost useless to have it. But for what I run, I would rather have the more damaging spell, even if it's not as useful. If I couldn't use it, if something was immune to it, then you bust out the Meteor Swarm. Spells like that, maybe delayed Blast Fireball, something like that. But so that's kind of was my thought on that. I experiment with it, but I found the damage here in Pale Master, or an Archmage, I'm sorry, with these SLAs to just not be good enough. I mean, I didn't run this character. I recently when I ran the character, I leveled him up from mid levels, teen levels. So maybe if I was running low level stuff with him, if I ran, because I'll probably do another wizard. I'm going to TR this guy into a Favored Soul next, I think, but I want to go back probably at some point and do another wizard life if I keep up with this character. So maybe I'll have a different opinion if I use this stuff in heroic, low heroics, because the damage, having worse damage won't mean as much. But for what I used it for, it wasn't really that great. So let's move on. I've talked way too much about that. Spell Pen. So obviously, this is a great one to have. Spell Pen is awesome, particularly if you're casting any kind of spell that requires a Spell Pen check. You want to have as much Spell Pen as possible. Intelligence, pretty obvious one here you want to take. You know, intelligence is kind of everything on a wizard. You want to have as much intelligence as as you want. This is more of these kind of lose a couple spell points per cast in exchange for some action points. I avoided that. Okay, this tier 4 here, another obvious one. You obviously want to take this because you get an extra DC to whatever your primary school is, and for me that was necromancy, so obviously took that. So that's actually it for the Archmage tree, because actually, let's go and talk about the tier 5s, because while I don't have them right now on my build, I did use them quite a bit. So yeah, I don't know why I was going to say not talk about it. Let's actually talk about this. So Arcane Supremacy, when I was using this, is actually really nice. So like if you're actually going to go to tier 5 in Archmage, this is an obvious one to take. This is probably like what you want to take it for. So you get a passive plus 25% spell critical chance, plus 100% spell critical damage for, I think this triggers every 90 seconds it can trigger. So that's really awesome. If you can get some meteor swarms out, some fireballs, some firewalls, it's super, super good. Like I loved having Arcane Supremacy. Like obviously super good. Maybe the best enhancement I would say in the tree. Yeah, probably the best enhancement I would say in the tree. Okay, School Mastery, not much to talk about here. If you go to tier 5, you get another DC to your spell school, and I think this is just another one to your primary school. And then this one is an additional DC to a spell school that is not your primary. So not much to talk about here. Obvious reason, you obviously want to take this if you're going to go to tier 5. So, Archmage, it's a pretty interesting tree, but at the end of the day, with Archmage, my experiences was like, if you want to play like a damage casting wizard, probably want to go with a sorcerer instead. With wizard, that's kind of why I went towards necro at the end, and I was doing enchantment, which isn't exactly burst damage or anything like that. That's crowd control. But with a wizard, I just found like from the different ways I played a wizard, and I did to go towards either, I guess not either, but to go towards necro, I think is still the best way to build a wizard. If you're going to build a wizard, go after insta kills, get your DCs as high as possible. Still, to me, that's the most effective way to play a wizard. And then have enchantment as your secondary school, so you can lay down crowd control as well, because that's obviously amazing, particularly if you're going to get into Reaper and stuff. You want to have good crowd control, and that's what a party's going to be expecting from you as a wizard, for you to be able to lay those insta kills down and do good crowd control with with the character. So yeah, that's kind of my thoughts. But if you want to play a blaster character, I just say just go wizard, or not go wizard, go sorcerer instead, like fire sorcerer or something. But as a wizard, you still need to have an okay ability, I guess, to do this burst damage type stuff, just because, particularly if you're soloing, because you can't insta kill everything because it's spell point intensive and stuff. There's a lot of stuff that's just immune to it. So if you're fighting undead, while you do have spells like Undead to Death, so there's a lot of mobs that you're just going to want to meteor swarm. So yeah, that's my thoughts, guys. Let me know what you think. Again, this isn't really intended to be a guide. This is just a video I thought would be interesting, since I made a video like 5 years ago on the Pale Master tree, so I thought it would be interesting to just talk about my thoughts in 2020 about the tree, since I'm revisiting my wizard. So yeah, guys, that's it for this video. Hope you enjoyed. I will see you next time. Have a good one, and take care.